So thank you very much, Professor Sood, and I would like to thank again Professor Rao for this invitation. So today I am going to talk about, of course, nanomaterials, nanoscale design and applications. And I will start my presentation by this. In fact, the evolution of humanity has always been strongly associated to the development of material science, the age of stone, of metals, copper, iron, glasses. The last century was typically the age of silicon and microelectronics. This century clearly is it's the age of what I call n at the cube, N3, is the age of nanomaterials, nanoscience, and nanotechnologies. To produce nanoscience, nanotechnology, nanomaterials, you have two main strategies. Let's say what I call the big stair of matter, to go from the nanoscopic world to the macroscopic world. You have two approaches. You can go up or you can go down these stairs, of course, starting from matter that you can divide. It's what we call top-down, and starting from very small elements, molecules or nano-objects, that's what we call, let's say, bottom-up. Okay, today, personally, when I am trying to create a new material, I can mainly try to mix, let's say, both approaches. So the main message of my presentation will be chemistry of materials is my field, it's important, but you do not have to forget that you should strongly couple your knowledge in chemistry with processing, with engineering. And also, we should couple, let's say, not only bottom-up approaches, but also couple this with top-down. So, what are the applications of nanocomposites, nanomaterials, let's say of the first generation, the ones that already are in the market? Not the one we are thinking about now, today, and in our research, but what is really in the market. For example, nanocomposite based on clays. Clays are cheap for mainly white lightening and polymer reinforcement. You already have a lot of this, in cars, as a main, let's say, in the main structural elements, or also anti-vibrations, flame retardancy, and so on. You have also, in sport and in, let's say, cars, most of the tires are based on nanocomposites. So you have a lot of nanos there, and mainly you have hybrid fillers, based on polymers, of course, but also on silica nanoparticles. You have also the field of packaging. Many packaging now, if you have a look with, let's say, a strong characterization method, they are composites, so they are nanocomposites. The field of insulation. You have a lot of companies that are starting to produce hybrid aerogels for insulation mainly, because you can produce these materials as coating on blankets or as pellets and powders. So these materials are already used for insulation of industrial, let's say, canalizations, and also in sport, for sportwear, and also for building insulation, because they have a very good insulation power, but at the same time, you can obtain some translucidity. So this already exists. Photocatalyst, yes, they are nano-based systems. Titanium oxide, the oxide is well-known. This is the self-cleaning roof glass of windows of the National Theatre of Beijing, covered by titanium oxide. Self-cleaning system, this already exists. Functional coatings, yes, a lot already functional coatings, anti-corrosion, anti-dust, anti-scratch, self-cleaning, anti-fogging, hydrophobic, of course. For example, in the example anti-corrosion, most of planes today start to apply nanosystems, nanocomposites based on Sol-Gel reactions to protect, let's say, the metals, because chromium should be avoided now for environmental reasons. Functional coatings, of course, you can really tailor what you want to do, just a little bit of imagination. If you want to have an anti-dust system, a protection system, and a sensing system, for example, for food packaging, or optical shield for protection of this kind of lenses and so on. Again, you can build it with nanomaterials, starting mainly from molecules. Functional coatings also for decoration and for cultural and industrial heritage. These are systems that have been protected by hybrid nano coatings. This is the mosaic of the Last Judgment Cathedral St. Vitus in Prague. It was before and after coating, a nano coating. Now it's like that, okay? So you have a plenty of fields. Again, microelectronics, micro-optics, photonics. You can make resist for printed circuits, curved lenses, micro lenses, waveguides. These are already based on nanotechnologies and nanomaterials. Energy, of course, energy. You have membranes for fuel cells, batteries, photovoltaic cells, and so on and so on. And this field is still growing a lot with all the knowledge that is coming from, let's say, basic understanding and basic research. Environment, sensors, portable sensors, biocatalyst, any kind of catalyst. You have a lot of materials that are already sold, and all these materials are nano. And the last, but not least, the medical, nanomedicine, and cosmetic field. A lot of nano. You have this on the left. You have these dental hybrid resins. Most of the resins today are nano-based, even if people do not want to pronounce the name nano because they don't understand and they are afraid. They are based on nano, and they are less toxic than conventional polymers when you can have a diffusion of monomers and things like that. Okay, hybrid micropearls for cosmetic, acne treatment. You have also these hearing aids that are protected by a film which is nano, and it's working against bacteria. Again, and many developments for nanomedicine as carriers, as also probes for imaging, for NMR imaging, for optical imaging, and these systems are based on nano. So there is a new generation of nanomaterials that are coming because of what you are doing, of your work, what we are doing all together, and that's important. So now I am going to shift to, let's say, to show you, let's say, some approaches that allow to make nanomaterials. So this is mainly is a cartoon with the main synthetic routes that you can use to make, let's say, through bottom up. In that case, you can make hybrid materials. Okay, on the left side, you have molecular precursors, salts, alkoxides, you add water, and because you are working in mild conditions, you can get composites. Black is inorganic, colored is organic molecules, composites with a control at the nanosize level. Of course, you can also play with specific, let's say, multifunctional ligands and try to bind, let's say, metal salts or alkoxides, and you get the field of what I call the coordination polymers, MOFs, if you want, metal-organic frameworks. So again, it's typically an hybrid, a nano-sized hybrid. But you can also control the first steps of the reaction, nucleation and growth mainly, to obtain many different nano objects, individual nano objects, colloids if you prefer. This one can be or small clusters, or small nanoparticles, or slabs, depending on how you direct, how you manage chemistry and processing. Of course, from these very well-defined nano objects, you can combine functionalize their surface with organic connectors, well-defined, that can be dendrimers or and so on, to make this kind of assembly in the bottom, very well organized assembly. And you can also play with, let's say, typically nanoclays or LDH materials through intercalation, grafting to make also composites. So in between these strategies, you can use both, let's say, on the left or in the right precursors, and then you start to use this precursor, but now you are templating the growth. You are making a template of your solution and to organize how matter starts to stick. So you can make self-assembly processes as nature does. In fact, in nature, it's mainly control and processing of materials and many things is controlled through, let's say, self-assembly. So I am going to show you a few examples on nanoparticles. Then I will talk about how to work with hybrid materials from a nano object and an organic connector. And then I will spend most of my time talking about self-assembly and how you can combine, in fact, these different strategic routes with processing to get what I call hierarchically structured materials. So you need to have a control not only at the nano size, because at the end you want a piece of materials. So it's a macro system. So you need to have a control from the nano size to the macroscopic size, and you need to have a control in the hierarchy of the materials that you are building. Okay, these are some examples of nanoparticles that have been done in the lab, but also in other places. And you have conventional oxides that can be interesting, let's say. Also more complex oxides, which are new at the nano size. Of course, you expect a lot of properties, magnetic properties on the left, catalysis properties and giant magnetic resistance property on the right, and also catalytic properties or supercapacitor properties for the middle rhodium oxide. You can also obtain, with new strategies of nanomaterials, you can obtain what I call exotic nanoparticles. This, on the left, nanomagnesium, substoichiometric oxides that can be metallic, semiconductors, very interesting for thermoelectric applications, for example. Metal nanophosphides, metal nanoborides. So nanoborides are very difficult to make, in fact, but now you have solutions to make nanoborides. And if you have a look at the properties of bulk nanoborides, you have plenty of. So this field should probably explode in the future. So what kind of a few properties, of course, thermoelectricity, catalysis, and so on, energy, and this kind of application. Okay. So now I would like to show you a very simple BioInspire example, which consists on the coupling, let's say, of a given nano object. It can be a cluster. All this slide shows different clusters with different metals. Can be zirconium, titanium, silicon. It's just a problem of choice. And I would like to show you what we can do as a kind of model, an hybrid material which is a model. If you are looking for self-healing materials, composites that present self-healing properties, you have to remember that the lifetime of a material and the damaging mainly is a multi-scale phenomenon. This means that when you observe a crack at the macroscopic level, this crack in a composite is related not only to break and cracking at these scales, like typically centimeters on millimeters, but it's also strongly associated to gliding, typically at the supramolecular, the mesoscopic level, and of course at the end you are breaking something, so you are breaking chemical bonds. So if you want to be able to have some self-healing properties in a nanocomposite, in a material based on polymers, you have to control carefully the two first steps, the chemical bonds, atomic level and mesoscopic level, and to have flexibility not only on the dynamics of the system, but also on dynamics of the bonding, okay? So let's have a look at what nature can do. This is typically a very interesting polymer, which is a component of the basis of mussels. It's a very good material, fibrous material, high extensibility, hardness, shock absorber, and it self-repair. How? If you have a look at the structure, you have in the middle in black, you have an elastomeric compound, which is collagen, a triple helix of collagen. But an elastomer by itself, no interest, because it flows. So you need to cross-link an elastomer. Everybody knows that. You need to add fillers. So nature add, let's say, what I call cross-linking lateral domains, hard domains that are fillers. And these domains are functionalized with many histidine-rich domains. Histidine is on the left side, this molecule. A very good power of complexation of divalent cations. Everybody knows that, okay? So these are the sacrificial domains. When the system starts to be weak and to break, you have a release because the coordination bond is flexible. You have dynamic. And you have, again, also you have the elastomeric system, which has its own dynamic at the mesoscopic scale. So how can we make a model, a material, which can follow, let's say, what nature can do? Okay, I will take first, as a chemist, a nano-object, which will be the filler, a nano-object that should present an interface with a lot of dynamic, okay? So this object, I don't go into the details, can be made room temperature with water. On the right side, you have this tin oxo object. Tin is not important, okay? It's just a model, okay? But what is interesting, this model is a double cation with, of course, compensating charge, two anions, X minus, X minus, okay? So I have a filler which a labile interface, possible labile interface. So this filler is functional, and I can use it. Second step, I don't use, let's say, OH minus anions. I will take an anion which is a sulfonate. That's just chemistry, it's very simple. But this anion can carry, on the right side, a double function, a polymerizable group, okay? And then I connect this filler with a dynamic interface to an elastomeric compound, acrylate macromonomer. It plays the role of the triple helix. So at the end, I will be able, and I obtain that from NMR, from many data, we obtain a material with this kind of interface. So we have an elastomeric part, a filler, and we have an interface which is an electrostatic interface. Now, the material, on the left side, you cut it, you stick two pieces together, and on the right side, you get 80% of the elongation at break recovery after, let's say, 2 weeks at 20 degrees or 24 hours at 90 degrees C. So the Byssus mussels, it takes 2 or 3 weeks at seawater temperature to repair. So that's just a model how you can conceive, let's say, materials starting from the knowledge to, let's say, a material. Of course, I am not going to sell this material, just a model, okay? And also these materials present shape memory properties, thermoforming properties, okay? So now I am going to show you a few examples on porous materials, mesoporous materials. To make a mesoporous materials, today it's quite easy since pioneer work of Kuroda and Craig. You start with, on the left, with, I can talk here, with a precursor and soap, typically amphiphilic molecules, that's soap, simple. So the soap makes self-assembly to make micelles. Everybody knows that because you are washing dishes and things like that with soap, and you are forming these micelles. And the hydrophilic monomers, this tetrahedron in blue, start to polymerize at the interface, which is hydrophilic. Then the condensation continues, and you obtain an hybrid phase. And if you remove the soap, you can obtain a porous material with very well-defined pores, of course, 2 to 20 nanometers, depending on, let's say, the kind of soap you are using, the kind of molecule you are using. But you can also start on the left with this very small ball orange that can be any kind of organic functionality you have in mind. And at the end, you will obtain an hybrid material with these functionalities located or inside or outside, depending on how you manage the chemistry. Okay? So what we can do today using organofunctional systems, we can, for example, obtain hierarchically construct hybrid foams I will talk about. You can load biomaterials and that. You can also obtain thin films of different thicknesses between, let's say, 10 nanometers to microns, depending, again, not only on the chemistry, but what kind of process that you are able to obtain, with very well-calibrated porosities, as you can see from this electron microscopy or AFM, let's say, view, very well-calibrated systems. So and then you can play with these porosities. You can imagine to add sensors and to add many, many different molecules in. You can also make these materials using templates or using aerosol processing. This is, for example, a set of materials that can be done by using typically coating processes and self-assembly to make mesopores. You have titanium oxide on the top, europium oxide, alumina, and many other. And these materials present, of course, many, many different properties: optical devices, sensor, catalyst, photocatalyst, fuel cells, supercaps, memories, spintronics. And you can make them like that as layers. That's one possibility. What about silica? Silica, yes, you can play with silica, of course. For example, controlling chemistry and processing, you can make quartz from macroporous or mesoporous silica. And then through, let's say, a control of the process, you can make macroporous or mesoporous quartz. This means that you can make quartz which is epitaxially oriented to the surface with a lot of surface. And you have a piezoelectric response, of course. So you can now start to imagine what you can do in terms of new materials, piezoelectric new materials with a lot of surface. This is just XRD, and this is the response. You can make also, just an example, a kind of tutorial example. You can use, for example, the same strategy, and now I have in mind, okay, I want to make a sensor. So I am looking for a function of recognition that can sense what I want to sense. So I make my mesoporous, a lot of surface, and these molecules are just waiting to sense something. This beta-decatonate, aromatic, do not present fluorescence, very low fluorescence when it's free. As soon as it feels BF3, which is a gas which is used toxic in microelectronic for patterning, let's say, you are forming this complex, a lot of surface, and you have this fluorescence answer with a detection threshold of about 10 ppb. For me, I like this example because it's just tutorial. I am not going to sell that. But you can imagine what kind of function I would like, what kind of sensor I would like. I'll do that, and at the end, you can detect a sensor. If your wall is electronically conductive, and we can make that too, it can be an electrochemical sensor, not an optical sensor. So you can imagine a lot of different things. Now, if you have a look at what nature can do, it's really marvelous. This is just a diatom, which is a microalgae, which is well known. It's a silica protection. It's a phytoplankton algae. So this system uses photosynthesis, and it forms photonic crystals to optimize, let's say, light. Okay? But what is interesting, this is a view at 20 microns. Now, if you improve your resolution, we are at 1 micron. You can see a second structure. And if we improve again, 1 micron, you can see the very small holes. And improve again, okay, 140 nanometers, and in the wall, you have very small, very well calibrated silica nanoparticles of about 10 nanometers. So you have a whole development of hierarchy. And the future in material science will be if we are able to control this hierarchy, not only the starting point molecules to make nanos, but also to control the system up to macroscopic level. With this degree of control, we are far from that, to be honest, okay? But we need to look in this direction. Okay, so how can we produce hierarchy? That's what I was saying at the beginning of my presentation. You can use bottom-up, of course, what I show in a few examples, but you need to couple strongly bottom-up approaches with top-down, with other methodologies, lithographic techniques, for example, 3D lithography, electrospinning, inkjet printing, aerosol, rapid ion etching, spark plasma sintering. You can combine that, or you can use bigger templates or control fast separation that are more related to physical chemistry. But it's very important to have in mind the coupling of all these strategies and other, of course, top-down strategies is very important for the future. The new development, many of them will come at the frontiers between bottom-up and top-down and processing. That's very important. So what can we do? On the left side, these are hybrid membranes, conductive, better than Nafion, I will show you. You can also make thermoelectrics through spark plasma sintering, the black, or fibers of thermoelectrics through electrospinning. You can make aerosols. You can also use inkjet printing on the right side to make mesoporous multifunctional sensors. Or you can make a very quite complex, let's say, shape on the left side. These two, this photonic crystal and this small dragon. This is a work that has been done by German colleagues using bottom-up strategies to make, let's say, composite resins. And at the end, the system that process is 3D two-phonon absorption lithography. The resolution was around 200 nanometers. Now they are coming down to 50 nanometers. Then you can imagine that you can, from, let's say, a computer, draw many different things with this kind of very specific topologies. So this can be also interesting. So just talking about electrospinning, you can use the SOL, hybrid composite polymers, and through an electrical field, you can make fibers, but so this means that you can make basic research with one fiber, studying spectroscopy, studying conductivity and things like that. But also you can make membranes with the same technique, and you can also make monoliths. So electrospinning is very versatile. It was used a lot for polymers. Polymer people know that better than we know. But now you start to see people using it in pure inorganic or in hybrid systems. And that's very interesting. I would like to show you just a few results we got. We were looking for membranes for fuel cells, protonic conductive membranes, with the reference was Nafion, of course, you know that. So we have been comparing with the same strategy, chemical strategy, the same mixtures, what kind of membranes you can get through spray coating, so you have the same chemical and you spray, through evaporation, you wet, or through electrospinning, okay? Through electrospinning. And to make a long story short, by far the best membranes are the electrospinning ones, because these systems are composites, and because you process these membranes through electrospinning, it's an hybrid based on PVDF HFP, a fluorinated polymer, which should have better properties than Nafion in terms of mechanics, and the conductive pathway comes from conductive organosilica. But if you have a look at the data, microscopy, neutron scattering, at different scale, it's a hierarchically constructed material, you have, let's say, a kind of core shell system in which you have this shell of conductive hybrid silica and the PVDF HFP. Okay? Now, let's have a look at the properties. In black, you have the best Nafion 212. Okay? This is the conductivity versus relative humidity. All the membranes made by the same chemistry, but by a different process, are in blue, 1 to 5 milliseconds by centimeter. Bad, very bad. The electrospin membranes are in red, so 100 milliseconds by centimeter, the level of the best Nafion, that's what we published 2 years ago. Now we are here, okay? Much better than Nafion. But not only this, if you have a look at the properties at 120 degrees, of course, the blue membranes are bad. The Nafion is losing completely the mechanical properties, 3 MPa as a Young modulus, while this composite has still 75 MPa. So you have not only a better conductivity, but also a better mechanical properties and better water management, okay? So hierarchy is important. Processing coupled to chemistry is very important. So now inkjet printing, you can start with alkoxide, functional alkoxide, and through multi-layer deposition, you can make arrays for sensing, for example. All these different dots, if you have a look inside the dot, from XRD or simple XRD of grazing incidence, small angle X-ray scattering, you see these dots, or this peak, which is characterized the mesoporous organization. You have pores that are well calibrated, okay? And from TEM, you can see clearly that the system is highly porous. Now, what can we do? We can add some different functionalities using click chemistry, for example, just a model, green one, and you can also add a second functionality, green and red, and so on. So typically, you can make sensors, multi-functional sensors. The future could be this kind of thing. So functional complex and hierarchical structure using control fast separation, bigger templates, again. Okay, these are typically foams. I will say a few words about that. To make foams, in France, you know, we like something which is called mayonnaise. We are good for that. So typically, this foam is a mayonnaise recipe, okay? We are using oil, a surfactant. Usually, in mayonnaise, you have a biosurfactant coming from eggs, okay? I don't go into the details. And we have this TEOS, which is an inorganic system or composite system that will produce the inorganic framework. So you make a microemulsion, like you make a mayonnaise, let's say. Of course, depending on your speed, the droplets can be micro or macro. This is a problem of mechanical speed, okay? Then you polymerize the system, and at the end, you obtain black systems, which can be silica, titania. And you will have, of course, because mayonnaise, typically, the microemulsion, it's in the micron size, okay? You will have micropores, coming from, let's say, the yellow spheres. And because you have the surfactant and you have a silica source, at the same time, you will have a mesopores through self-assembly, okay? So typically, here are the macropores of the mayonnaise, let's say, and these are the mesopores, the small pores very well calibrated. This picture can be much nicer. If we play with physical chemistry pickering, we can tune the mayonnaise to have all microspheres equal. But it's not important for this kind of properties and application. But what you can do now, you can play with chemistry. You can play with the precursors, made mayonnaise and monoliths, foams, bimodal foams with different systems, with different shapes, mesopores, macropores, and you can make catalyst, of course, because you have a lot of surface, but also you are not constrained by diffusion because you have these big macropores that help the system to diffuse. You can load lipases, and you can also, so for biocatalysts, you can also, today we are looking to create, let's say, bacteria inside to see how they behave in these big foams for also biocatalytic applications. So you can make nanocasting. This means that you can use your foam, fill it with a resin, and then you carbonize or pyrolyze. So control of these steps can give you different carbons, graphite or amorphous carbon or other carbons, very interesting. And then you can remove silica, okay? And you get, let's say, a system with hierarchically porous, and you can shape, of course, depending on the recipient, you can shape mayonnaise, and you can make also chromatographic columns, and these columns can be loaded with biomolecules, and you can, they can work in flow. This is typically some data coming from these carbons for electrodes, efficient lithium-sulfur batteries. What you can see on the right side is the quality of the mesopores, and the big spheres are the macropores. The surface area are still quite interesting, around, let's say, 800 square meters by gram, and the remnant capacity after 50 cycles is still of 800 milliamperes by hour and by gram. Okay? So, of course, these systems need improvement, but just an example to show the kind of strategy you can do. Okay, integrative approaches, coupling, again, chemistry, soft matter, and one kind of strategy that you can use different templates, because the templating with soap or with surfactant, you can control, let's say, size of particles around, let's say, 10 nanometers typically. 2 minutes. Okay, I will go fast. So, just how to make a nano carrier. Very simple. You add latex, surfactant, you produce inorganic network. At the end, you will obtain a sphere coming from the latex, so a large pore, and a porosity in white, very small channels corresponding to the mesophases that you are forming with the soap. This is a very well calibrated object. That's the porosity that you can get. Okay, so you can see the channels are clearly aligned with respect to the center. And now you can play with this for making, for example, therapeutic carriers. You can load the system with gold. Because you are confining gold in these very small channels, you are not making a nanometric gold, but very small nano, typically 2 nanometers. And the story starts to be interesting because when you make these nanogolds, what I call gold quantum dots in the channels, and most of the gold is like that, you will have a carrier in which you can add drug, but you also have a very small and a large amount of gold quantum dots. And these quantum dots start to be very interesting. Why? It's a silica. I can answer to question after that. But what's interesting, when golds start to be at the nano-size level, very small, it starts to be to have absorption properties at 700 nanometers, and you start to have photoluminescence. So this means this gold can probe through imaging, through fluorescence, the system. And because we have this strong stock shift, we can not only have a nice system for imaging in the good transparency windows for tissues, but we can also have photothermal therapy. And it works. On the left side, typically near-infrared fluorescence. Okay? In the right side, more interestingly, gold at this size starts to be magnetic. So you can have an image with a contrast for MRI. Because gold starts to be magnetic, and because you are producing some heat, you have also photoacoustic imaging. Okay? So my last example, and I run fast, can be the last process, aerosol. From aerosols, you have a lot of versatility, And you can use all the chemical strategies I was talking about, but all of them, as soon as you know how to stabilize the colloids, to make powders, to make patternings and things like that. You can imagine now different mixtures to obtain that, for example, if you want to play, or that. As you can see, you have different functionalities, different porosities through aerosol. One shot, just by spray. I am at the end. Okay, just to show you, we can make oxides, binary oxides, aluminum oxides. We can also make biosystems or hybrid systems because there is an important point in aerosol. You have seen we have a furnace where the droplets are going, okay? So the temperature of the furnace is at the temperature of evaporation of a mixture water alcohol, typically let's say between 800 degrees C and 120, something like that. And the time life is only 2 seconds. So very short time life, temperature, okay, so this is compatible with biosystems, biological molecules, and also with organic molecules. So you can produce hybrids. Okay, I am at the end. Okay, I'll go. These are catalytic properties. We took just 20 patents on this kind of stories, just by aerosols, okay? So it's a really important field. So my conclusion will be, the next generation of nanomaterials, probably we need to look for a complex functional hierarchical structures, and we should be clearly close to nature and be inspired by nature. We can learn by nature many processes, morphosynthesis. You have a few of these processes in the yellow box. But if you look at materials that are made by nature, they present a good level of integration, a good level of intelligence, and a good level of autonomy. So nature is a kind of star model, let's say. It's in this green star 111 axis, okay? Along this 111 axis, it optimizes the system. Where we are today, to be honest, we are here. Not at 0, but just above 0. So there is plenty of work to do, and my last message will be integrative strategies, of course, coupling chemistry, process, soft matter, coupling bottom-up and top-down, that's very important. Of course, we should look for green strategies, and maybe synthesis in open systems will also open, let's say, many different ways of thinking in material science, because many of the systems that nature does are open systems. You have a pseudo-equilibrium, but they are open systems. And many of the syntheses that we do are closed systems. So maybe we should think this way. Okay, a big cornucopia, I guess, and we have a lot of work to do, as you can see, to create new materials. I would like to thank my colleagues in Paris, Laboratoire de Chimie de la Matière Condensée. And I would like to thank also PhDs and postdocs, and also colleagues in black are from France, in blue are from, let's say, out of France, so very interesting and stimulating collaboration and discussion. And of course, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Sanchez, for this very exciting talk, and also a warning. We have to go from 000 to 111 in that your fascinating plot. Actually, I think we don't have too much time for discussion, but hopefully Professor Sanchez will stay for lunch. You can all interact. But if there is one pressing question without which the universe cannot move ahead, I will invite.
Yes.
You are sure? Yeah. Okay.
I am Rajshekhar from JSS Mahavidyapeta, Mysore. My observation is that there is more demand for organic and inorganic and hybrid nanomaterials in the coming days. The market for nanomaterials is estimated at some $1 trillion. It is at this moment I would like to raise this question. Can we produce nanomaterials through particle farming? Have you heard of particle farming? In Texas, they have experimented on alfalfa plant. That plant could absorb gold nanoparticles from soil, and we can easily separate gold nanoparticles from alfalfa plant, unlike the complicated chemical process. Could you throw any light on particle farming and production of nanomaterials, sir?
Yeah, if I understand the question, you are talking about the possibility to make materials through nanoparticles? Yes?
I think what we'll do is, since your question is a talk in itself, we will refer you for offline discussion. And in the interest of time, please join me in thanking Professor Sanchez.
Sir, kindly be there for a moment. Yes. I would like to request Professor Sood to give a memento to our esteemed speaker. As indicated, he'll stay back for lunch, so you can take questions offline. So kindly accept a memento.